Hey everybody, welcome to Liberation, our workshop tonight on this beautiful Tuesday night. My name is Dr. Jordan, and over here we have
Dr. Mike.
And Dr. Tiffany.
And tonight we're going to be doing a presentation on healthy summer tips. So, you have a normal way to do things, whether that's pool chemicals. I know we're going to talk a little bit about insecticides, sunscreens, things like that. And as you transition to a more healthy lifestyle, there's more and more areas of your life that you have to start paying attention to. And, typically you think, you start with the toothpaste, you start with the food and the food additives. Eventually it makes your way through your entire life, and you get down to things like makeup and the sunscreen issue and everything. So we're going to be addressing the most common issues regarding toxicity and ways that you can work around the more common toxins in your life through summer activities. So I'll be starting, and I'll be talking about pools, water parks, and electrolytes.
Well, it was.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to start with swimming pools and water parks. Everyone knows that they're not the most hygienic places. They're not the cleanest places to be. And if you think about pools and that pool smell, the indoor pool smell that you smell, it's not the chlorine. And we'll get into what it is in just a minute. But we start with disinfectant chemicals. So a lot of times they use, I believe it's sodium hydrochlorite is the name of the chemical they put in pools. And when you add it to water, it turns into hypochloric acid, which is it's a weak acid, which means it's easily able to lose parts of its compound to bind with other compounds, specifically urine, and we'll talk about how they interact. Urine has a compound in it, urea, and it's got a lot of nitrogen, and nitrogen and the chlorine and the chemicals like to interact and form some nasty other nasty compounds. Other bodily fluids include sweat. Sweat's also another producer of that nitrogen. And other bodily fluids, it can include number 2, as much as, hate to bring it up, but it is common. And also another issue is improperly cleaned pools and decks. So on the flip side, from an over-sanitized pool, you can have an under-sanitized and one that's not taken care of, and can lead to organisms from nature that just inhabit the pool, or from other people, speaking of fecal material, that make its way into the pool itself. And also you run the risk at public pools for like athlete's foot or fungal infections of the feet if they don't properly clean the pool decks. Just things to think about. I'm not trying to scare anyone away from pools, but we'll get into some more modern solutions in just a minute. I want to talk a little bit more about the peeing in the pools though. So University of Alberta, they did a study and found that there's an average of 14 gallons of urine in public pools on average, and that's a pretty hefty amount. And the way that urine mixes with chlorine, if it's a chlorine-treated pool, it forms a compound called trichloramine, and you have another one called cyanogen chloride. The second of which is they tested it as a chemical for warfare. It's similar to tear gas, makes the eyes runny. That's not the chlorine that's making your eyes runny after the pool. It's probably cyanogen chloride and chloramine. So you can see the reaction here, or the progress from ammonia from urea, from urine. As it gets around chlorine tends to bind to it. And once you have 3 chlorines around this nitrogen, you have something called trichloramine, and it's a gas at room temp. And it will leave the water and give you that nice smell that you smell in indoor pools if it's not well ventilated. Can lead to itchy eye irritation, and even lung irritation, upper respiratory issues, and things like that. And it's a common issue. I think Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte both admitted to peeing in the Olympic swimming pool. I mean, I think most of them would admit to that. And it's gross from the standpoint, you can argue that urine is sterile and such, but it's just wrong because it creates these chemical toxins that really wreak havoc on anyone swimming. But last thing is E. coli. So it only comes from one place when it's in the pools, and unfortunately that's fecal material, but it was found in 75% of pool filters. And That's also another nasty microbial agent that makes its way into pools. Now, if you're thinking about creating your own pool, or there's other ways to do it than besides just treating it strictly with chlorine. A lot of people think about like salt water systems and things like that, but there are a few others. And if you take a look at this diagram, you can see a little bit more of, I guess it's a simplistic way to look at chlorine and the nitrogen, how they interact. Wonderful tips by the CDC. We love to see the CDC. It's really complicated things like stay out of the water if you have diarrhea, shower before you go into the water, don't pee or poop in the pool, and don't swallow the water. Pretty important tips there. And let's move on. So, the ways you can have your pool nice and clean without all the chlorine. So we'll start with salinity. Saltwater pools, it's really cool how they work. Didn't know this until recently, but the way saltwater pools work in conjunction with chlorine is you create an environment outside the bacteria that is hyper concentrated or just has a lot of salt, and it will actually pull water from the bacteria itself and cause it to shrink up. It says crenation is the term there for that, but it allows it to pretty much just die. And by reducing the amount of bacteria present in the pool, eventually enough water, or some water will leave the bacteria and dilute the pool itself. But that plus chlorine is a solid choice for keeping chlorine out of your pools. UV light is also wonderful. Now you don't want to put it right into the pool. There's talks about risks for cancer from too much UV light and UV radiation. But if you actually throw it in line into the pool system itself, it can reduce chemical demand. This one says up to 85%. And you just run it through the line so you're not in contact with this UV light for a prolonged period of time. But it actually it messes up the DNA of the virus and the bacteria within the pool itself, and can reduce chlorine demand as well. Ozone, pretty good. It's a system that you use to pump O3. So if you think about the oxygen that you breathe in is O2, and that's just two oxygen elements combined to make the gas that we breathe. O3 is ozone, and you pump it right into the pool. It quickly will dissolve into the water and quickly reverts back to, if you have multiple O3s, it quickly forms oxygen gas and dissolves right out the water. Nothing too complicated, nothing too dangerous. That's probably one of the best ways to go that are more natural for killing bacteria. And I know from experience, I had a bad toothache, and I've actually had ozone injected into my body. So have had an abscess before that ozone was used to kill the abscess. No effects, no side effects. It was great. So more and more demand for pools now. And the last one is something called Sea Clear. And I had never heard of this. You might have heard of diatoms or diatomaceous earth. It's, I believe, ground up shellfish and shells themselves. So it's ground up to a fine powder. And it's used commonly in gardens. I think you can use it in water as well, but in this case you can. But in gardens to deter pests that crawl on the ground, because it'll literally shred them. And in pools you can use it as well. They make I believe it's ground up crab shell compound, and they actually go to trade shows and will sit there and take little shots of it diluted in water, so to prove its safety. And neither one of the owners are dead yet, so I guess it's okay, if you're into drinking shellfish and stuff. So, any questions on pool issues, pool anything?
I have one.
Yes.
So the stuff that supposedly turns the pool blue if you pee in it, is that true?
It wasn't grown-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Sure, I saw it.
But I think if they implemented it, it would cause a lot more issues than not. I think the whole pool would be probably nice dark blue public pools.
Yeah. That's real gross.
As nasty as it is.
There's
Yeah.
another pool alternative called natural pools, and that's where you can build like a pond type additional pool. So you have a shallow area where you grow plants and stuff like that, and then a deeper area where you swim, and that you have to have a lot of circulation to keep the water moving through the plant system, but that helps keep your backyard pretty and also filter your water, your pool water.
That'd probably be the
plants
most.
still through the water? Is that what it does?
It's
There's
like the
plants
whole
and
perimeter
sediment.
of it is a real shallow area
Oh,
with
okay.
plants. Yeah. So it simulates a pond. but the inside of it is a pool. Yeah,
No chemicals.
pretty
That'd
cool.
probably be the nicest looking.
yeah,
area.
they're awesome.
Yeah, and there were a bunch of other new ideas being put down the pipeline, so to speak, and these were the most common. But yeah, there's probably a dozen other things that they're coming out with. But any other questions?
What about, so you mentioned the pool deck would have, like, if it's not properly cleaned.
Yeah.
So if you are somewhere barbecue or wherever, do you suggest like wearing pool shoes until you get into the, just in case? Like, what do you suggest with that?
If you're at a public pool, yeah, it's better to be safe there. Maybe a barrier between you and the actual ground. But like I said, they can either overtreat or undertreat the pool, and your feet can actually absorb the chemicals if they're remaining latent on the top of the pool deck. I'm a fan of pool shoes, but I mean, athlete's foot is, if you've ever had it, it's not fun. But as far as like at home with your private pool, I mean, you know, you should know how much they take care of it. Maybe, you know, I'd use your own discretion.
Definitely
there.
wear shoes into the pool bathrooms though.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't actually have a pool at our house. We have our neighborhood has a community pool. And
Probably use pool shoes there.
Yeah.
because I've only been in it twice.
Okay.
And one of the first times I was in it, I got, came out within a day, I had just small little red whelps all over my chest. Yeah, and I was like, I don't know what it is, but I'm not getting back in the pool.
Yeah.
So
Like,
the way
I
they, University of
Somebody said it was chlorine poison or something like that, like it was too
Yeah.
Too much
strong,
chemicals.
too many
much
chemicals or something.
it could be they tested the water quality by testing they tested the amount of urine through testing the metabolites. I think it was artificial sweetener that doesn't get digested, it gets passed through the body, and they've I guess had a formula to convert it to that 14 gallons per pool. I can only imagine if it's not well maintained, then it could be more. They could just dump chemicals in it to get it to look good.
Yeah,
But-
and let's just stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to ruin your summer.
Yeah.
We're gonna kind of stay on the topic of urinary health here. We're gonna get to electrolytes next. So we're turning away from pools here. And electrolytes, if you don't know what they are small compounds, elements that have an electric charge and do tons of things, whether it's from nerve impulse to muscle contraction, muscle relaxation. They aid in building bone, enzyme function, things like that. And they're really important. We know as we sweat, we can lose a ton of sodium through sweating. And everyone thinks when you think electrolyte, it's either Pedialyte or Gatorade. And we're going to talk about why Gatorade probably might not be your best choice. If you look up here, you can see the amount of sugar within one bottle of Gatorade is 30 grams, which is equal to 5 donuts at Krispy Kreme. And it's not telling you to go out and just skip your Gatorade and eat, 5 donuts. But sugar is definitely not a good thing to throw into a sports drink. They actually consider it a non-electrolyte, so it can lower the effects of the electrolytes that you have within your drink. And when you're drinking a Gatorade for that purpose, for the fuel, for the electrolytes, you don't want to drink something that counteracts the compound within the drink. Also, you can see some nice ingredients here. We got red 40. Let's see, monopotassium phosphate, natural flavor, could literally be anything. And they also use in the yellow ones, yellow dye as well. Take what you want from food dyes. We know they're pretty toxic stuff. Kids with ADHD, really shouldn't be given these these fruity drinks after sports or any time. It's been shown to worsen symptoms in hyperactive children, and in adults it could be a carcinogen. Definitely more research needs to be done by the right people doing the research. But that's it for Gatorade. We're going to move on to some other things. When you're trying to lose weight and you're consuming sugar mid-workout, or you're consuming, if you consume too much at one time and you're not able to immediately use everything you just consumed, your body will produce insulin to get it out of the bloodstream and into the appropriate tissues, whether that's the muscle as glycogen. Could store some in the liver as well if the muscles are full, probably not during working out though. But when you have insulin be put into the body, it's a fat storage and sugar storage chemical. you can't lose weight while there's insulin floating around the body. And so if your main purpose for working out, in endurance events is to lose weight, you probably need to lay off the high amounts of sugar, mid-workout. As well as after. I mean, some people will tout an insulin spike is good for working out, but really, it's well known that you can't lose weight while insulin is predominant in the body. Next is keto adaptation. So a lot of times you hear a counter argument to going keto is keto flu, and to anyone who's had keto flu or experienced the keto diet or just a low carb diet is flushing of the electrolytes from the body. So as your body uses the glycogen that it has stored, it tends to flush a lot of sodium and a lot of potassium as well with it. And if you just take the appropriate electrolytes to replenish the ones you've depleted, typically the symptoms go away very, very quickly. And as far as fluid intake, we get asked all the time. I did want to address hyponatremia. Fluid consumption during the summer does need to go up, but if you're carrying around a gallon, the way we've talked about in the past, that's probably too much. You just need to drink when you're thirsty. And you have this great internal clock to tell you, hey, it's time to drink some water. And the same thing with salt. You have your body to tell you, hey, I need salt. When you crave these things like French fries or these salty foods, salt is needed, but not in the form that you usually get it. And the form that you usually get it is processed, iodized. It's been processed at 1200 degrees, so the natural minerals have been stripped. So they have to add anti-caking agents. They have to add iodine. Just some things that are really taxing on your health, all for the sake of processing the salt. So better alternatives. We have Himalayan pink salt. That's my personal favorite. Celtic sea salt's okay. I've heard that some sea salt brands, they've been ran through a coffee filter and they found microplastics, monomers from plastic that's been broken down in the ocean. Haven't completely verified that yet, but I stick to pink Himalayan salt. Are there any other types of salt that you guys?
I usually go with the Himalayan.
That's what we stick to.
Okay. Yeah, it works. But too much water consumption can lead to a flushing out of electrolytes. So typically, if you are sweating a lot and you're in the heat, you're using a lot of salt, you do want to have some form of salt that you can take, and other electrolytes as well. And so, best alternatives to Gatorade for electrolytes. You can never go wrong with fruits and veggies if you're out in the heat, and that's something you can bring with you. Oranges after a soccer game and such. You want to stay away from the Gatorade and the Powerade, especially the ones with the artificial sugars. And I personally will take something called Relight. It's a stevia-based, so there's no sugar, electrolyte mix, and I think it has about 1 gram of salt per serving. I usually will take 2 or 3 servings if I'm doing anything endurance-wise or sweating a lot in a day. Another good alternative is coconut water. So coconut water, naturally balanced with all the electrolytes you need. Of course, it does have some sugar, but it's contained within the coconut, and it's actually sterile within the coconut. In some cultures, because it does have sodium content and it is sterile within the coconut, they'll use that during surgeries. They'll use that for IV infusions as well. And coconut water makes a really, really solid, healthy alternative to Gatorade. But I did have the salt recommendations of 2,300 from our nation's leading health gurus. The American Heart Association, however, says 1,500 milligrams a day. I have done study and found that it's actually worse to consume less salt than it is to consume too much salt. And the theory is that when you intake salt, fluid will follow. So when you have salt in the blood, you'll have water coming into the blood as well, increasing the blood volume, so you'll have a higher blood pressure naturally, and you'll make the heart pump harder because it's got more volume in it. And the theory makes sense, sort of, but it's not true in fact. We have systems within our body to excrete excess salt. as long as those systems are working well, I believe it's RAAS, renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, to flush excess salt, then they're A-okay. I mean, as long as you have these systems that are working fine, you're good to not where you have to consume too much healthy salt. Your body will tell you when to stop consuming it, just like water. You'll stop craving these salty foods. And it works opposite in, if you think about like sugar or cigarettes, that's a positive feedback loop to where you consume more, you crave more. Salt's the opposite. It works in something called a negative feedback loop. So your body will tell you when you've consumed too much. Stick to the healthy stuff. Don't get your salt from French fries or fast food, and you're usually A-okay. And I also read that endurance athletes can consume as much as 11 grams a day and be perfectly fine. I myself, I don't crave it after drinking my little electrolyte drink, so I know I'm good. But in all the studies, the lower the salt intake, the higher rate of cardiovascular disease. And one last thing, there was a study done, and they concluded there's paradoxes in place. The French paradox, the Japanese paradox, and the South Korean paradox. And these are the highest consumers of salt but have the lowest incidence of coronary heart disease. And instead of looking for answers through these cultures, they've called them paradoxes and mysteries of science, and haven't looked further into it. But
It's like a conspiracy theory.
mm-hmm. Yeah, Japanese and South Koreans, for instance, they eat a lot more fermented foods than we do, and they're doing just fine with their heart disease. France as well, and the Mediterranean diet incorporates a ton of salt. Typically, if you think of before refrigeration, things were cured. The rates of heart disease weren't there. So to now all of a sudden say salt is causing our heart disease epidemic and take the blame off of other places, it's really malpractice. But paid research and such. But yeah. Any questions on salt or electrolytes?
Now that coconut water, would you recommend, like if I'm out working in the yard, sweating, and I drink a lot of water, would you recommend drinking the coconut water instead, or just drinking
Oh, for
regular
sure.
water?
Coconut water.
Okay.
Yeah. The only reason I mentioned it has sugar is if you're doing a low carb ketogenic diet, but even if you're drinking that, the amounts of sugar are so low that you probably wouldn't even come out of ketosis if you're working out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll add about salt, if we're going with official recommendations for salt issues when we think of cardiovascular disease, you're not getting the overconsumption of salt from added salt at the table. A lot of the time, high sodium content is in the processed foods, and that's where we see the issue of having too much sodium consumed.
Mm-hmm.
So adding a little salt sprinkle on top of whatever that's not the culprit.
Yeah. Anything from a box, typically.
Yeah.
Preservatives, salt. Any other questions? Okay. I think I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Number 2, whoever it is.
All right. So I'm going to cover a couple of things that are kind of not so much in your body, but things that are related to summer. One of those is going to be lawn care. And you know what? There's a lot of products on the market, regarding lawn care stuff, and I'm just going through one possible option. But the reason why is most people don't think about all the chemicals that they dump on their yard. Okay, if you, how many of you have a garden or have gardened before, right? And so we take all this time and we have this little garden area that we, want to grow organic stuff. But if you're poisoning your yard all around it with chemicals, then likely that's going to end up intermixing at some point, So in addition to that, of course, one of the most common weed programs or weed chemicals out there is, of course, Roundup. And Roundup has all of the lawsuits with it and everything. Definitely don't recommend that. But there's a lot of other chemicals that are probably not any better. But we still use them. All the chemical fertilizers and you start looking at how all the runoff, affects the Gulf and how it kills everything off and, causes, and all these different problems that are created by, it would just be nice to have something cleaner, to deal with your yard, but at the same time keep your lawn looking nice, So here recently I came across and started looking into this, and we actually decided to go with it. So don't call it an endorsement. It's just an idea of what we ended up going with. It's called Sunday Lawn Care, and the way that it works is it's pretty cool. It's it's a startup, so they haven't been around all that long. But what they did is they were like, hey, we need to know the area. We need to know what the climate is like in your area, what your soil is, really custom tune, programs to fit where you are. So what they do is they Google Earth your house, and they determine kind of how big your lawn is based on that, and then they custom tune your program to that. And the neat thing is, I think it was like $129 for the year. That's for the year, the entire year, right? If you look at that compared to your typical, I don't want to throw out names of companies, but your lawn services that go out and they spray your yard and do all that stuff, it's well more than $129 a year, right? But what they do is, as soon as you sign up, they send you your first box of stuff based on the time of the year. So I think I got 2 bags of the Iron Booster, sent right away, and that's based on looking at your local climate. So they know based on this area what lawns particularly need, and then and it tells you, what window that you want to shoot for to treat your lawn. So depending on the size of your lawn, they're going to send you how many bags will actually work with that, and it comes with the nozzles and everything. And you just hook it up to the hose and walk around and spray your yard. But the cool part is they're natural ingredients. They don't use anything that's chemical oriented. At least that's what they say. So I can only go based on what they say. Of course, like I always say, do your own research. And really look at them closely. But from what I've seen, it's clean. And then they of course give you based on with your first box, they send you a soil sample box, and you take samples from all around your property and you send that back to them. So now they actually have the constituents of your soil, and they can really custom tune it for your future shipments. And then every couple of months, they're going to send you a new another box that is in the cycle of the process of what needs to go on. And from what I've seen, the reviews fantastic. It keeps everything clean. You don't have to worry about your kids and your pets running around on your yard. They do recommend, I've learned more just from the initial literature than I really ever had about, having a really nice lawn. Things like keeping your grass cut really high. They go into detail telling you how, everybody butchers their lawns and cuts it real short so that they don't have to cut it as often, and then, of course, you basically kill your grass every time you do that, and then it has to, try to come back. So, all these different tips on what to do and how to do it. It's pretty neat. So, I definitely recommend that. They have you overseed your lawn every year. Where you go and they'll actually send you the seed if you want to buy from them, or you can go from elsewhere and you reseed your lawn every year. It just makes you think on a different level. So, I'm excited to see what the results are with it, but. Of course, you guys can choose. There's lots of new programs coming out available. It's neat what competition in the marketplace can do now. You don't just have to go to Lowe's or Home Depot and pick whatever chemicals are on the shelf. You've got these places that are now able to reach audiences with a better idea, not just a product backed by a multinational corporation, right? Okay, on to the next one then. And this is pretty cool. We actually just had this morning, I had a call with a rep from this company called URINE, and had my contractor, my lawn guy, he was on the call with me to get trained potentially for this area. And he's actually going to go ahead and do it. And we went ahead and we set up, we're going to be the first test system for this. Really, really cool. Does anybody in here have a sprinkler system at their house? Anybody seen a sprinkler system before? Yes, everybody, right? Okay, so we all have seen the problems with sprinkler systems, right? They have heads all over the place. They're all over. I mean, you've got dozens of heads around a property, and what do they always spray? The sidewalks, the driveways. They pool in areas, they overlap like crazy, but then you have other areas that don't get touched. okay? As opposed to, your little inkjet printer that everybody has at home, right? It can perfectly, because it's all digital, it can perfectly draw anything you want on there, right? So how cool would it be to be able to print your lawn with water? Well, that's what this does. These nozzles, they have 14 different spray patterns. It's all computer controlled. And the way it works is it literally just follows a pattern, and it adjusts the flow as it's shooting. So if you have a sidewalk or whatever, it learns and pulls back and doesn't shoot the sidewalk and extends out to the corner and then pulls back in. So it perfectly prints everything. And on a standard size lawn, you only need about 5 of them for the entire thing, which means installation is easy because you only have to run one pipe around the perimeter to match all of them. They have a surface the whole thing is app controlled. Everything's app controlled now, right? Where on the app, you actually draw the outline and you can adjust everything. You can sit there and, work with it. And if it's shooting out too far, you can pull it back in, like all of this stuff. And it will, because it's app controlled, it will look at the weather and it'll know if it rained the day before. And so it'll skip that day if it's not necessary. It's all AI controlled. But the neat thing is, because again, you're cutting down on how much piping and digging and therefore all the labor with it. You're cutting down on all the equipment that is with it. The equipment's a little bit more expensive on the upside, but here's the cool part is they say that the average, based on our yard this morning, it said that we will save over 5 years approximately 17,000 gallons of water. That's in just one yard. So that, that 17,000 gallons, how that translates out to cost, what it means is it pays itself back over time. So think of this like solar panels, right? So really cool. We will probably, the reason why we're doing our house as the test is that we will most likely do the new property with this system so that the entire thing is all perfectly covered and we're not, spraying customers, and spraying sidewalks and parking lots and everything else. So really, really cool. Okay. Couple of other ideas that, just things to make outdoors easier. Okay, we've got 3 kids that play competitive soccer. We spend a lot of time at soccer tournaments, right? And a lot of times they're in the summer and it's hot. I recall one where we went to it was a local like Vietnamese church or something. It was a Buddhist temple. And they had a soccer, and they like hosted this whole thing. I'm not kidding. It was like 110 degrees out there, and they were having a whole festival and everything. And I mean, I remember we were just dying out there. We didn't have any cover. This was in the early days, So we've gone from those kind of situations to really kind of figuring out what works and having our pattern down. So speaking from experience, if you will, one thing that I love, this is a cool idea, keep cool, favorite Ryobi misting bucket fan. There's another one called Arctic Cool, which is exactly the same thing, but real simple. If you're going to the beach or you're going to a party or a pool party or whatever, you stick your bucket and your fan in the car, and it runs off of their batteries, so you don't need power. You just bring their rechargeable battery packs, which we got like a dozen of those battery packs. So throw a couple extra of those in the car, and then the bucket you just fill up at a spigot there, anywhere, wherever it is, you just fill it up, drop it in there, put the tube in there, and turn it on, and you're going to have a misting fan that just there for yourselves. So easy, but can make life a little less miserable while you're watching your kids die out on the soccer field, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you think, yeah, it's like, we're hot. No, they're hot. They're out there literally dying. Okay, second one is to stay out of the sun, okay? You guys have all gone to the beach, and remember, we always used to buy all the big umbrellas that you like push up like a typical umbrella, but how heavy are those things? Have you seen the videos where the wind comes and grabs those things and throws them, and like people have gotten javelin and stuff like that? It's terrible. But everybody, I think, has had their umbrella taken from them by the wind, and you're like chasing it as it's rolling down the beach. So these are fantastic because they're lightweight. It's the Sunbrella XL. They're not that expensive, but they're really, really lightweight, and they're huge. So you can fit your whole family underneath them. They pin down to the ground. They screw into the ground in the front. They come with stakes that go all the way around, so they're not going to go anywhere. If it is really windy, they have the slots in the side of them, so the wind doesn't really get caught and it whips right through them. So we've had these at soccer tournaments as well. For the rain is probably the biggest thing. While we're watching games and they're out there playing in the rain, we're all sitting underneath the umbrella, and it works out well. So those are great. Next one here for super portable chairs. Okay, all of the, most of us have those pull-out chairs that are all one piece, and you like pull them apart, and then eventually they start sticking, and then you're like wrenching at them, trying to get them to open, and then you want to chuck the chair, but they weigh a ton, and they always want to unfold as you're carrying them, so you're dropping them and everything else. Been down that road, had the cart that you have to pull, in order to carry all the chairs and everything. But then you have to pack the cart, right? So it just creates all these other problems. These things are fantastic. I know Dr. Jordan said he's got one too, that he takes camping with him when they're hiking. Where do you guys hike again? The Appalachian Trail. Yeah. So if you can, put this on your back and carry it on the Appalachian Trail, it's okay going to the beach or a soccer game. Right, these things weigh how much again?
Mine's a pound and a half.
Yeah,
Mine doesn't have the back like that, but mine it's half chair, but it's a pound and a half.
They're so ridiculously lightweight. I mean, the thing packs up this chair. We have two of these, and it fits in this pouch this big, literally that big. Okay, and you take it out, and you all the pipes are all folded together in a bundle, and you just take them out and pop it into the hole there. Right, and lock them all into place, and then you take the sling, you pop it over the back first, and then over the front, and it's done. And they're comfortable. Those big chairs, those things are terrible. You sit in them like a banana. These things are really actually quite comfortable. So they've been fantastic. The only thing is, because they are lightweight, if you're not sitting on them, the wind can take them easy. So that's about the only downside to them. But I definitely recommend looking at those. Those are the Cascade Mountain Tech chairs. Next one, clean water anywhere. If you guys have ever been camping, you know how that's one of, especially for an extended period of time, that's one of the worst parts about camping is having to carry water with you, right? Have you guys ever gone for like a full weekend with a big group or something? You've got like the big, jugs or big old cartons of water. I mean, we've got, tanks that are this big at home and all this, but with these you can literally go to the campsite. You can get water out of a pond. It doesn't matter.
That's what
And
we drink pond right out of the river.
Yeah,
With that filter right there.
it's amazing. You just put it into the pouch, attach the filter onto it, and squeeze it out. It's completely clean, and it works for 10,000 gallons?
10,000 gallons.
Something like
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
That little thing, 10,000 gallons.
You gotta clean
It's
it after each use.
insane. It's crazy how, depending on how dirty the water is.
Mhm.
Yeah, if it's muck, then yeah, you're gonna have to do it. Will it clean urine?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's Bear Grylls. I don't know.
You'll have to try that on the
Yeah.
next
Yeah, that's
next
disgusting.
camping trip.
They
and let us
usually
know.
do. They usually, because I've used the, I know there's one advertised years
Life
ago, it was
straw.
the straw. I mean, you literally just put it in straight into a pond or anything like that and drink straight up.
Yep.
It's good for, like you said, thousands and thousands of
Yeah,
gallons of water.
the life straw I don't think is good for as many gallons as
It's
the
a
soil.
1,000.
Yeah,
It's a tenth, but they're both really good.
they're great too. We've got both the life straws, and then we bought these ones later when we saw the difference in capacity, and we've even got like one of the family ones, stashed away just in case you ever need it. So, but these things are absolutely fantastic for camping. All right, and that's it for me, Dr. Tiffany.
You guys ever seen The Office?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Gabe yelling about the sun. I'm going to be talking about sun exposure to your skin and sunscreen. We know that our body synthesizes the hormone vitamin D through exposure to the sun. It uses the cholesterol in our body to convert it into the form that we use. So it is important that we do have some exposure to the sun. The problem is where we balance time in the sun so that we don't get burnt. Everyone's first thought is to just slather on the sunblock. But in addition to synthesizing the vitamin D, sunlight promotes our health by releasing serotonin. Serotonin controls mood, it controls some digestion. So it's something we need. We definitely need some exposure. UVA and UVB are two of the three types of ultraviolet light that the sun creates. They can be harmful to our skin in excess. UVA will prematurely age your skin, and it can damage your retinas. And then UVB is the light that burns our skin, which we know can increase the risk of cancer. So sunscreen works by creating a barrier on your skin. It can create either a physical or a chemical barrier. Traditional sunscreens will use a chemical barrier to either reflect or absorb the sunlight. We have chemicals in our sunscreen, two really bad ones, retinol palmitate and oxybenzone. Retinol palmitate actually in exposure to sunlight can be a cancer risk. And then the oxybenzone is an environmental concern. It actually bleaches the coral reefs when it washes into our water systems. Mineral sunscreens, though, create a physical barrier on the skin by using minerals like zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. You sometimes have to watch the type of mineral. It can still be combined with chemical ingredients and create a problem. SPF is what we use to rate sun protection factor. In my reading, I actually learned a lot about SPF and was pretty interested to find that SPF 50 is about the highest we get with the most beneficial sun protection factor. Anything over that doesn't provide a whole lot more safety or protection from those UVA and UVB rays, and it doesn't last longer than lower SPF rating sunblocks. And then I also learned that U.S. sunscreens are not allowed to be sold in Europe because they're considered too weak. I don't know if that's good or bad, but usually ingredients in Europe are a little more strictly monitored than they are in the U.S. So I have some alternatives. Like I said before, the big thing is going to be balancing your time in the sun. We want to use physical barriers to the sun like clothing, long sleeves better than short sleeves, hats with wider brims so that you can protect the back of your neck as well as your face. You want to limit exposure during the peak hours, which is usually between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And then plan to take breaks in shaded areas. And then you want to confirm that your mineral sunscreen is broad spectrum, so you want it to protect from both UVA and UVB. Some of them only protect from one or the other. And then build up resistance. You don't want the first time you go out in the sun in the summertime to be a whole 8-hour ordeal so that you have to worry about your sunscreen taking care of you. And
like snowbirds that come down here to Orange Beach.
yeah, well, and I'm even guilty of it. I'll be like, I'm from the South, it's fine. We'll go out. But a lot of people, I know I've had friends before, it was a thought of myself too in the past, that we'll just tan in the spring and get ready for the summer months with a tanning bed. But you actually do about 12 times more damage to your skin in a tanning bed than from the sun itself. So you want to stay away from that. Not a fan. But for basic protection daily, coconut oil can give protection as high as SPF 10. So that can be a good use for, I know a lot of women especially, we like to use SPF in our daily skincare routine. So coconut oil can be good, especially for short-term exposure. But the big thing is your internal sun protection. So you can have things that promote skin damage and sunburn, and you can have things that protect your skin. And so some of the things that can promote inflammation are the vegetable oils, processed grains, and sugars. Those create inflammation in our body. The things that we can consume instead of that, though, are things like vitamin C with the anti-inflammatory effects, vitamin D3, which we already know
keeps our immune system healthy and promotes bone density health. But it also can be protective against sunburn and skin damage itself. And then coconut oil and other good fats, which also help protect our skin.
If I can mention on there, when I was a kid and I, was on, all the allergy shots and allergy medications and ate like garbage, and all that stuff all the time, I used to burn like crazy. I mean, I would burn like I was a redhead, just like, I'd go out in the sun.
Speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself.
Until you
So-
burn like a redhead, you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. But I first day, I would go out for an hour and I would get sunburned. So I literally would just have to just be incredibly careful about staying out in the sun. But now, or not just now, but once I started cleaning up my lifestyle, in my 20s and into practice and everything, as I started learning this stuff and applying it, it's at the point where if I do get a little bit of a sunburn, it's pretty much gone the next day. Like, I'll look like I'm red that day, and then the next day it's gone and it's suntan. And it's just wild how toxicity and inflammation has such a massive effect on it, because it literally is massive. It's make or break. I had a professor back in chiropractic school that would talk about that, and she said sunburn is not because of the sun. It is a toxic shock syndrome. It's like trying to scrub your oven versus spraying chemicals in there to strip the goop off of it. All of that stuff that's in your system, all those chemicals, is what's causing you to burn, not the sun itself. Kind of changed our perspective.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So next we'll talk about insects and bug protection. So in our typical bug repellents, we have the chemical DEET. It's a compound that was developed by the U.S. Army in the 40s. It was really interesting to read about because, we have a lot of issues with Gulf War syndrome and stuff like that, and toxicity issues from how DEET interacted with other chemicals in their insect repellents that cause neurological issues. But if you look on the internet, if you search DEET, it is just the phrase you'll hear is most effective insect repellent. And it works to repel insects. It doesn't actually kill mosquitoes especially. It blocks our scent from them. They can't, tell that we're near so that they can target our skin. But it is considered safe and effective by the FDA in small doses, but it actually can cause allergic reactions. It can cause respiratory issues in the sprays and neurological dysfunction. And then in wash off, it's dangerous to small invertebrates and fish in the environment. So some tips to keep insects away. Obviously essential oils is a popular use. Things like eucalyptus, citronella, lemongrass, tea tree oil, rosemary are all popular. You can apply those directly to the skin. Some need a carrier oil to mix in. Depending, like tea tree, you kind of want to mix in with an oil. But a lot of people mix witch hazel and apple cider vinegar and their oils to create a spray that you can safely spray on yourself. Another one is, covering up your skin with long sleeves and long pants helps in conjunction with the sprays. That's usually pretty effective for us. Ultrasonic pest repellents. These supposedly create a frequency to deter pests from you. On the internet, there's a lot of back and forth about whether or not that is useful.
I will say, our last time hiking, we stayed in the shelters instead of tents, so we were in open air, and bugs and mice and everything. I brought an ultrasonic pest repellent, and the first night I didn't use it. I thought I was just gonna go to sleep, and there was a mouse probably about that close to my face. And I jumped up, freaked out. It jumped up, ran away, and turned that thing on. And the next 2 nights, I slept peacefully in the open air. And it definitely repelled mice. So there is some.
So
some
Dr. Jordan 1, Internet 0. Everyone take
that.
that.
Yeah, you gotta use it though. But I didn't end up with a headache or anything. I did re-reviews that sometimes, some people could be sensitive to it, but it just depends on the person.
If you have a mouse brain.
If you have a mouse.
Yeah, if you have a mouse spray, there
I
we go.
didn't know.
That's a
Right?
connection.
So another good technique are fans. Mosquitoes and fleas, which I didn't know, are weak flyers, and so whenever you have a fan moving air, a good breeze, that can keep them from getting near you. And then, like essential oils, we have plants that repel insects. You have mint, lavender, and basil are all good, but also burning sage can keep pests away. The smoke repels them. And then, obviously do things like screen an area if you're going to be out there frequently, like a back porch or, patio, something like that. So I did want to throw this in because we do talk about chemicals and ingredients that go directly on our skin. With sunblocks, I think it was like within 12 seconds, the ingredients have entered your bloodstream. Some of the ingredients in sunblocks can cross the barrier into breast milk. So it's definitely a concern for us. A lot of people, especially me, if I feel like something is too big for my brain, sometimes I'm like, I can live without knowing, blissful ignorance. But it's nice to have kind of a backup for you whenever you're trying to choose which products you want to put on your body. So the Think Dirty and the Environmental Working Group apps are really great at kind of being a buffer for you if you're out somewhere you want to scan something real quick. They give ratings based on things like respiratory irritants, endocrine disruptors, carcinogen ratings. And then it's also good to just keep a list of no-go ingredients. So, for example, the retinol palmitate, that's something that I would try not to keep in any products that I use, especially regularly on my body. Do you have any questions about that?
I wanted to share some input. So, so he is very fair skinned. At one time was a redhead, and he can't be in the sun for a long time. And he'll sweat a lot, so he'll put on, if he puts on sunscreen, it just comes off. Mm-hmm. And what has literally saved. I mean, his skin is bad. So at one time he was instructed not to go outside for more than like 30 minutes or 45 minutes because of the skin. What's really, really helped us be able to live like normal lives is, and they're expensive, but the clothes that have the SPF protection in them. And we do have a hat where he looks like a beekeeper. I mean, it goes down and over the face with a veil. And
It's a fisherman's hat.
Yes.
It just has the thing that goes across my neck. That's what I use whenever I'm out working and climbing on roofs.
It's allowed us to live, if we want to do yard work or something like that, like normal, and I can't say enough about it. And so when you do buy these clothes, they're expensive. You find them at like the high-end sports stores, but they're worth, I think, like the deep sea fishing area or something will have those clothes, and that's been wonderful. So that's a nice alternative to any kind of chemical. So they're worth the money if you have skin like he does. And then my question to you about the sunscreen. So I do like to be in the sun, so we're on the opposite end of the spectrum. Do you recommend like SPF? Like what SPF would you recommend for someone who, say, wants to go to the beach and get some sun for a long period?
I think it depends on how fair you start off. Obviously, you're going to want to build up that resistance to sunburn slowly. But I'd say whatever you're comfortable with. If you're more fair, maybe a 50 would be better. But we just know that effectiveness of the SPF rating doesn't get any better the higher the rating gets. Yeah. So if you want to go high end, go 50. But if you have been slowly exposing yourself to the sun, lower is probably okay for you.
Would you recommend always wearing an SPF?
So that's actually one thing I
long term.
didn't mention. One of the issues with constantly having sunblock on is we are filtering out those rays, and that doesn't give us, I think we were talking this morning, UVB is one of the rays that helps us do the conversion of the cholesterol for the vitamin D. So no, I don't think you should have constant coverage. If you are going to be out for 8 hours, a majority of that, maybe cover for that, but not for the full time.
Yeah. Okay.
Too much
that
sun.
helps a lot.
I think too much sun. You produce more vitamin D the longer you're out. But too much sun, I think, depletes folate. And I did a video a long time ago about the people who are more from the equator, versus northern. Their genetics, they're naturally darker, right? And that's to have a balance between vitamin D production and folate deficiency. So if you have darker skin, it'll protect you from depleting too much folate from sun exposure. And if you have lighter skin, then you you can easily get the vitamin D, but then you have to worry a little bit about taking a little extra folate or being a little bit more healthy with your diet. There's that balance, and there's a reason for it.
Very good. Any other questions? Any other input? I know I didn't mention pest protection outside of just on yourself, but Dr. Mike uses neem oil for plants on trees and stuff in the garden to protect from pests.
Don't put it on yourself.
Yeah.
Made that mistake. Gnats buzzing around your face, you get mad, you're like,
What's it
oh,
called?
that's it. Neem oil.
Oh.
I was outside once,
Yeah.
just got mad because the gnats would not stay out of my face, so I just put a couple drops on like that, put it in my hair. Nope. About 60 seconds later, I felt like it was like I was gonna throw up. They call it puke fruit.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, I know why. It was bad.
So if we don't have any other questions, I want to thank you guys for coming out and listening to us tonight. We enjoyed having you. Thanks, Ricky.
There's one thing that I've, and like she said, I'm very fair skinned, and I've talked to you about it before. I go to a dermatologist like once every year, have the basal cell carcinomas burned off my face because my dad's had experience with it. And I'm like, I'm not going down that route. He's had to have parts of his face cut off for that reason.
Talk to me about that, by the way.
One thing that I've noticed though is, after talking to you about it, and like even that sign over there on the wall, it's like the sun does not cause cancer; it prevents cancer.
Yeah.
So far this year, I've not put on sunscreen at all, and I've been talking to you. I'm out in the yard a lot now. I've been out in the yard a lot, working in the sun. I haven't got burnt at all. I've got a little red. But the next day, like even we went to the pool and I found out that, the umbrellas at our pool did not have UV because I sat under this thing for like an hour, thought I was okay, got back inside and I was all pink and I'm like, how in the world did that happen? But the next day it was gone.
Yeah.
That rarely happens with me.
Yeah.
And, I've told you I use this stuff that the dermatologist prescribes to me. I put it on my face and it draws it out and makes it crusty and it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had to use that at all, and the more I've been out in the sun, the smoother my face is starting to get.
Yeah.
It's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Well, we've made some lifestyle
It's just-
changes.
This is
Yeah.
Well, I mean, lifestyle
this is the
changes
good
too.
kind of new normal.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just weird that I have, it's been pumped into my head since I'm a natural redhead when it was red. All my whole life, stay out of the sun, and if you are, cake up, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then, here recently I've just been like, screw it. I'm not gonna do any of that. We've started taking vitamins, we started doing this, started doing things better, and now just being out in the sun seems like it's just clearing this up. When the dermatologist would tell me, do not do that, do not go in the sun.
Yeah.
Make sure you wear a hat, put on sunscreen, do this, and they're telling me the complete opposite of what's actually clearing it up.
Yeah.
And it is a
Lifestyle
really hot topic online. Whenever you see, I was looking at a lot of articles about internal resistance into sun damage and sunburn, and you always see the comments, well, I myself or my so-and-so, had skin cancer, and it's a very, very emotional topic for people. But it is wise to understand that whenever you are covering up completely and blocking out those rays, you're not synthesizing vitamin D, which then further leads you to issues with your immune system. And so then we have issues, in the immune system, but also if we do have any skin change issues, we're less apt to be able to recover from that. So,
Very good.
good sun.
Yep.
And I also wanted to share what you were sharing about a while ago about the chemicals on the lawn. I actually worked with a woman who shared with me this week. We got talking about something. She was poisoned to the point of near death for about a year and a half, she said, from standing, just she didn't realize what it was until later, until after everything was said and done, that it was a professional lawn care. Somebody had come out and done something to her yard. She went out and talked to the guy in the yard, barefoot, standing in the grass. And she said, within a few minutes, it just went through her body, pulled it out. She literally was poisoned to the point for like a year she couldn't drink anything but like goat's milk. She couldn't hardly eat. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. All this other stuff was going on, and she had to basically just heal herself because they kept telling her stuff that wasn't working. And she traced it back to the pesticide or whatever it was that was put on her lawn that almost killed her.
Yeah.
And it sucked it in through her feet.
Yeah, there was a $243 million lawsuit against Roundup for glyphosate, and they still sell it in the stores.
Yeah.
So, they've made billions of dollars off this product, and they're still selling it
Yep.
And it caused a man to lose his life in a hefty lawsuit, but it's still allowed for now.
Mhm.
My husband worked in agricultural analytics when we lived in Georgia, and even his direct supervisor was like, this stuff is safe. These are natural compounds put together, and you know, he sprayed his lawn with it regularly, and wouldn't you know, his whole family has a whole bunch of issues and autoimmune disorders and toxicity issues that they're like, well, you don't know what's going on, and you know, we're constantly using the fertilizer and pesticide.
It's scary to think
It
about with
is.
little pets, because you don't put shoes on your little pet or your
Kids,
children,
yeah.
right? They don't wear shoes in the
Mhm.
summer, you know.
Yeah.
So it's something to think about.
Mhm. But your lawn looks nice.
Yeah.
The fish are always as sick as the fish tank.
Mhm.
Yep.
Now you're making me think twice about it. See, I just fertilized my lawn a couple of weeks ago with the you know, Scott's 3-in-1, you know, and all that, the powder
Yeah.
stuff, and you do
Yeah.
all that. You know, and I'm kind of, you know, I mean, of course, I've done it before, but
Research.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it makes you think twice about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Just be more choosy about what you do buy. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, if there's any other questions on the, you know, from YouTube, Facebook, anything like that, of course, put them in the comments. You know, and we'll try to get to them. Anything else?
Okay.
Nope. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Fabulous.
So did you have?